So you're thinking about making a move to Houston, Texas. Well, hold your horses. It's not all rainbows and unicorns in the great state of Texas. Especially if you're coming from cities or states like California, New York, Illinois, Washington State. The majority of the people that we're working with, that's where they're coming from. And so you're definitely in for a culture shock when you arrive. So today, we're going to talk about 3 negatives, 3 things that you should keep in mind when you're moving to Houston. But we're also going to discuss 3 positives, 3 reasons why I love Houston, and so should you. So we're going to get after it right after this. Now, what's the deal, guys? If this is your first time on the channel and you want to know everything about living and moving to Houston, then please subscribe below, tap the bell for notifications. That way you're aware and you're notified once we post new videos on our channel. Again, my name is Sam Caratala. My wife Trisha and I, we've been helping families for over 22 years move to the Houston area. We've also helped plenty of families relocate within Houston, and we absolutely love it. So whether you're looking at making a move in 10 days or 100 days, give us a call, shoot us a text, or send us an email. You can even schedule a Zoom call with us. All of our information will be in the description below, and we're happy to help you make a smooth transition to Houston. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to cover both the pros and the cons about living in Houston. And to tell you what, there is some good ones on this list. There's definitely 3 great negatives, but there's also 3 great positives. So to start off, we're going to start with our negatives. One of the biggest negatives that we have in Houston is in regards to the weather. That's a question that we get all the time, especially people that are moving from California, where the weather there is great all year round. Well, I can tell you this, in Houston, boy, does it get hot. And when it gets hot, it gets even hotter sometimes. And because we're down here in the southern part of Texas, close to the Gulf of Mexico, it also can get humid. But you know what? To be honest with you, I love this weather, especially in the springtime. It can really, really be nice, especially from like late February and through April, May. The weather's 75, 80 degrees. Even today, it's early January and the weather is about 75 degrees outside. I mean, we were just recently, a couple weeks ago, we were in New York and it was cold. It was like 20 degrees. And so I don't know about you, but I will take the warm, humid weather over the cold weather any day of the year. Now, another concern that people have about Texas is definitely our hurricanes. We are considered one of the most natural disaster prone cities in the country. Hurricane season here runs anywhere from like June 1st through the end of November. Peak season for hurricanes is usually from August to probably mid-September. And the picture that you see here, that's actually from 2017. That was from Hurricane Harvey. It devastated Houston. So there's always a concern for flooding. When it rains, we're always concerned about, will it flood? But one of the things that I always tell my clients when they're buying here is, regardless, even if you're not in an area where it's, known to flood, also keep in mind that in Houston, when you're buying a property, most of the properties, they have a seller's disclosure attached to it. The seller's disclosure will tell you if the property did flood. And so we have other ways to see and confirm if a property flooded or not. We also recommend that not only do you get inspections before you buy a property, but that you also get flood insurance. Flood insurance, if you're in an area that didn't flood, runs about $500 a year. So for peace of mind, definitely something that I recommend that all of our buyers, especially if you're relocating to Houston and don't know about it, I definitely recommend it. Another thing is we always want you to have an emergency kit in hand. Once every 5 years, you'll be called to evacuate the city. And so you'll definitely want to have an emergency kit handy so that way you're well prepared, especially in the hottest parts of the year. Another con about living in Houston is the property taxes. Property taxes in Houston tend to be a little higher than other parts of the country. Lots of people that are moving here from higher state tax places usually come here and they're shocked because our property taxes are so much higher than theirs are. On average, our property taxes are probably about 2%, some like high ones, up to 3.5%, depending on what subdivision you're in or what part of Houston you live in. An example is, personally, we live in Katy. Whenever we moved here, the property taxes for our neighborhood, it was about 3.5%. Our neighborhood started probably about 2010-ish. We moved in 2014. So along with your property tax, there's also a MUD tax. So that it's called MUD. It's a municipal utility district, and usually that is a fund. It's paid through bonds and investments, and it's created so that it provides water, sewage, drainage services for newer neighborhoods where the Houston city water doesn't reach. And so those bonds are usually collected, and so you're taxed with your property tax. That's part of the tax until those bonds are met. Usually it takes anywhere from 15, 25, sometimes 30 years for some of these tax rates to drop. Like some neighborhoods, Cinco Ranch here in Katy, started in the high, mid threes when they first started, and now their tax rate's down to 2.5, 2.6%. And so that's definitely something to keep in mind. But one of the good things too about our property taxes is that it's based on the appraised value. It's not based on what you paid for the house. So keep in mind that Texas is a non-disclosure state, so you do not have to tell the taxing authorities exactly what you paid for the property. Now, you will get surveys in the mail, you might get calls, you might get people trying to ask you, hey, what did you pay? Can you give us a copy of your closing disclosure? You do not have to share that, okay? If they have that information, then definitely they're going to tax you based on that. So, and always, I always recommend that you always protest your taxes. Contact myself, there's companies that'll do it for a flat fee, and they will fight your taxes every year. So that's definitely one of the, the cons about living in Texas. Another con about living in Texas is how big it is. As you can see from this map, Houston is huge. We're not waterlogged or landlocked. It just keeps growing and growing out further west, further north. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And so you do have to drive a lot. That's one of the disadvantages, is that there is a lot of driving in Houston. So it's very important that you get with an agent who knows a different neighborhood. Depending on what your lifestyle is, depending if you're an empty nester or if you have kids that are looking for the best schools, or if you want to be close to work, definitely get with us and we'll be able to point you in the right direction. For example, I want to give you an example of, going back to this map, is I recently helped a family, actually probably about 10 years ago. I helped a family. It was a young couple that had just got married, and they were looking at moving to Houston. And so this couple was moving from the Midwest. They just got out of college. They had great jobs at Marathon Oil in the Galleria. And of course, they're trying to get the best bang for their buck. And so instead of living somewhere close to work, they had no restrictions. They didn't have to move somewhere because of schools. So they, contrary to what I told them, they wanted to live where it was affordable. So they ended up moving to Katy, which is a great neighborhood. But unfortunately, Katy is not that close to the Galleria. It is, if you look at this map, this kind of gives you an idea of the distance from Katy, or from their neighborhood. They were actually moving to the west. It was kind of the southwest part of Katy, a neighborhood called Westheimer Lakes. Wonderful neighborhood, great schools, and they were going to be working in the Galleria. And so when we pulled it up on the map, it was about 45 minutes to and from work. I did tell them that, guys, this time that we see here, this is not peak time. This is not when you're going to be driving to work and when you're going to be coming home. You're working at an oil company. You're going to be going in it from, typically 8 to 5. That was their schedule. And they said, you know what, we can do it. We're going to save over $100,000. And so we're willing to give up the quality of life to be able to save some money. And so they did move to that area. About 6 months to a year later, they contacted me and they said, Sam, you were absolutely right. Yes, even though we did save some money, we hate the drive. I mean, they were driving anywhere from 3 hours a day, sometimes 4 hours, depending on traffic and when they left to go to work. So that was insane for them. So we ended up selling their property. They ended up making some money, and we found them something in the city where they were able to drive within 10 minutes. They were at work. A couple years later, they relocated to a different city. We're still great friends, but that's an example of Houston. We're so big. There's so many different neighborhoods. So definitely get with us. We can help you with finding the right neighborhood, finding the right property that's gonna be perfect for you and for what quality of life that you want. So those were the 3 negatives about living in Houston. So you had the weather, you had the property taxes, and you had the size. Houston is so big. So now we're going to talk about the pluses or the pros about living in this wonderful city. One of the best things that I like about Houston, me and my family like, is we love the rodeo. So if you're ever in town, if you're here anywhere from late February to mid-March, definitely you have to check out the Houston Livestock Rodeo show. It's a wonderful opportunity for you to bring your family out. It's usually done, I think I mentioned it's from late February through early March. Over 2 million people visit the rodeo every year. I mean, they have barbecue cook-offs. They have a huge carnival ride with plenty of rides for your whole family. And then also they have cowboys that are in competition, and you can see bareback riding competitions, bull riding, steer wrestling, tie-down roping, barrel racing, so many more activities. We enjoy it. And then plus, every single night there is a concert. So there's some amazing lineup of stars that come. We go every year. We've seen Beyonce, we've seen Kane Brown, Gwen Stefani, George Strait, Kid Rock, Pitbull. I mean, there's so many others. We even I think back in 2003, I think I even saw Selena in concert. So definitely, if there's one thing that you got to come out and do, is you have to check out the Houston Rodeo. And so along with, because we're so big, another attraction that we have is we have our parks. This park that's pictured here, this is Herman Park. It's a 445 acre park that borders several different neighborhoods inside the city. It's close to universities, institution, the medical center, plenty of green space for you and your family. It also has pavilions, picnics, lakes, gardens, golf course, railroad rides for the kids. You also border the Houston Zoo. So those are all great amenities for Herman Park. One of my favorite parks inside the loop in the city is Memorial Park. So this park is actually 4 miles west of downtown Houston. Over 4 million people visit this park every year. Probably about 10 years ago, I visited that park every day. I lost 60 pounds running in that park. I used to run about 30 miles a week. I loved it. Now I probably go there maybe twice a week. We still love going out there. This rendering that you see here, they're actually making some improvements to the park. They're actually doing a land bridge that's going to cover Memorial Drive. And so if you can tell here, it's going to be just beautiful. I mean, they have they've done so many remodeling and so many improvements to the park. So that's actually one of my favorite things to do inside Houston. So definitely check that out. And we didn't even talk about all the other attractions. You have from the Johnson Space Center, you have the Houston Museums, you have all the sporting events, you have Minute Maid Park, BBVA Compass, you have Reliant Park, you have the zoo, you have just so much. It's a plethora of things that you can do in Houston. So that's another, that all actually fits into one pro. That's because it's so big, there's so much to do in Houston. So definitely take advantage of it. Another advantage of living in Houston, or pro about living in Houston, is that there's a lot of work, a lot of opportunities. So whether you're in oil and gas, aerospace, you're in the healthcare field, manufacturing, technology, whatever it is, Houston's economy is booming. There's a plethora of jobs. So definitely, that's a huge perk about living in this wonderful city. For number 3, our third pro about living in Houston is the cost of living. If you compare Houston to other parts of the country, if you look at the first 3, New York, San Francisco, Washington, even Los Angeles, I mean, look how high the cost of living is there compared to Houston. Houston's in the bottom 3 for the cost of living. And the 2 under it, Tampa and St. Louis, those cities combined, it's about 6 million people. And we're at 7.1 million people in the Houston metro area. So cost of living here is definitely a huge perk. You know, obviously those were 3, but another perk and another pro that I love about Houston is the weather. Yes, we talked about how hot it can get. We talked about the hurricanes, but year round we have great weather. So and because of that, there's so many advantages, so many things you can do outside. There's so many restaurants that have outdoor space. There's so many outdoor events that you can attend to. So that's a huge perk. And then also being named one of the best food cities, we're finally getting recognition for some of the best places to eat in Houston. I don't know about you, but I know we have the best barbecue, we have the best steaks, Tex-Mex, Asian food, Cuban food, and that's just to name a few. And so definitely that's another perk about living in this great city of Houston. So again, guys, those were 3 negatives, 3 cons about living in Houston, but also 3, I think I said 5 pros about living in this great city. So if you guys have any questions about what we spoke about, or you'd like additional information, or want to schedule a free, no obligation consultation with myself, Trisha, or someone from our team, please feel free to call us, text us, or email us. Until next time, guys, y'all have a great day.